stick on social media.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now,
My wife and I
I
thought,
want to look at SDGs, get it in second place.
You wrote mine down.
you want almost everything to do.
A couple of, now,
Yeah.
Kelly.
Here.
Mrs. Grandison.
Here.
Mrs. Sproul.
Here.
Mr. Miles.
Here.
Mr. Trimmer.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go to the board discussion, I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting that's on Zoom watching it. And at this time, we'll go to Mrs. Sproul.
Okay, today from the Boardsmanship Guide for School Boards by OSBA, I'm just going to discuss expectations of a board superintendent relationship. A superintendent should expect that the board will act in an ethical and responsible manner at all times, furnish objective counsel and advice, reserve the administration of the school as his or her responsibility, provide support so long as he or she carries out board policy in a competent and professional manner, evaluate his or her work fairly, impartially on an annual basis, encourage participation in educational meetings, seminars, conferences on a state and national level as time and funds permit, have an established set of policies and procedures to guide him or her in performing his or her role, keep current with educational trends, and participate in service activities designated for board members. Also, always act with respect and respect confidentiality. Likewise, a board should expect the superintendent will operate in a fair, open, and ethical manner at all times, work with the board members on an equal basis and not show undue preference to individual board members, strictly enforce the policies set forth by the board and operate within the established procedures, keep the board fully informed on all matters of its concern, interpret accurately the school district's needs to the public, work toward improving the instructional programs and staff relations, avoid unexpected issues, topics, and areas of action at board meetings so that the board can have adequate time to respond after being fully advised of all the facts. Operate the system in a fiscally sound manner. Prepare an agenda in a business-like manner to keep the board meetings to a responsible length. Keep the board advised of changes, innovations, and trends in education that might be applicable to the system. Function as a chief executive officer and respect confidentiality.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to follow up with that, so the community understands why we are doing this. A lot of times the community doesn't really understand the role and scope and the responsibility of their board members. So we're taking a little bit out of the boardsmanship manual, each board meeting, and discussing a little bit so you have a better understanding of what the function of the Claymont board is. So thank you very much, Michelle. Okay, we'll go into the administrative report, Buckeye report.
Okay. Buckeye update for March 2021. The students returned to full schedule today, and even at work. This has been a full year. I mean, at this time last year, I was working in COVID-10. So in regards to Buckeye, 1 year ago today, we closed school last year, but they returned to school full schedule today, working on spacing and safety and priority. Hands-on instruction is so important for the Buckeye students with their skills and trades. Mr. Alsep shared a statistic from the superintendent of Hilliard City Schools, and I just felt that it would be good to share, stating that they had fewer than 10 students hospitalized for COVID, but during the same time they had 86 students hospitalized for suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
So emphasizing the need of structure and normalcy is real, and our kids all need it, we all need it. I would like to thank our staff here at Claymont for their continued efforts for working through these challenges and staying connected to our students as well as their staff at Buckeye. Just another update, the staff at Buckeye received their second round of vaccines. The Buckeye House is coming along. Progress is being made despite the challenges with the pandemic. And just because I'm always a month behind, because my meeting is after our meeting, February student of the month was Connor Harlan. He is in exercise science and sports medicine. He's a senior at Buckeye. And just some of his highlights, he's a 2-year member of the Drug-Free Clubs of America and HOSA, Future Health Professionals, serving as the vice president of that program last year and as the president this year. He was a national qualifier in 2020. He's the member of the National Tech Honor Society and is a 4-year varsity wrestler for Claymont. He did represent us at state this weekend as well. He works at the Tuscarawas County YMCA and Bueller's. He's a lifeguard at Newcomerstown Pool. He also volunteers for Challenger Baseball and is a sports medicine student at Comanche Valley. Just wanted to emphasize Connor and great job being student of the month for February for Buckeye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Principals and Administrative Report.
Jody, you want to go over your report?
I can. It's been a couple months since I've been here, so I apologize. But I had some other things I was attending to. So I just wanted to give you an update of what's happening in my world. So a lot of things that I do behind the scenes people don't really know about. But we're in the middle of a science curriculum review. I think I mentioned that the last time. We're nearing the end of that. Probably by next month we'll have a decision made. But because it's right after spring break that this meeting will happen, we'll probably not submit a proposal to you until May to have a new science curriculum purchased. We have an upcoming professional development day. I feel like every month I say something like PD. We've had a lot of that this year. This Friday is focused on Leader in Me. That was a commitment that the district made, and the morning we're going to be reviewing the 7 habits of highly effective people, which is something that we started with this fall. So we'll review that, and then the afternoon is going to be building customized based on where they're at in the process and what needs to happen at each area or each building. The Joint Evaluation Development Committee has been working together a lot to develop contract language for evaluations. I'm sure you're aware OTES 1.0 is over this year. We have to transition to OTES 2.0. So there's a lot of language changes that have to be made in the contract. So we are done with that. It's currently in Mr. Wrench's hand to approve as administratively, and also the JDC Executive Committee has to approve that. And some conversations with Mr. Wrench had today, there's some things we need to go back and maybe tweak a little bit, but the main part of that is done, and I want to thank the JDC members. I mean, it sometimes can be a tough committee to be in. Half of it's administrative, half of it's teachers, but we've worked really well together to get, I think, a product that is acceptable to both sides. So I'm appreciative of them. The local professional development committee will be meeting on Monday after school. That committee approves activities for teachers to renew their licenses. So just some information about what high-performing teachers are. The designation will eliminate the need for a teacher when they renew their license for the next license renewal not to have to take either 6 semester hours, 18 CEUs, or 180 contact hours, because they're in a position of leadership and educational professional development in our district. So if they meet those qualifications, they don't have to go out and get all of those other CEUs, but they're probably already doing it anyway with the leadership things that they're doing in our district. Testing updates. We are next week rolling into testing season. The ELPA test, which is our Ohio English Language Proficiency Assessment for our English second language students, and our alternate assessment, which are students with disabilities. Those tests have been completed and they're actually sitting in my office waiting to be picked up by UPS. But the rest of the state assessments, the ELA starts next week on the 22nd, and we have a window until, I believe, what's on here, April 19th to finish. We've got a spring break in between there, and then on April 19th we will start science, social studies, and math assessments for grades 3 to 10, and then 11 and 12th graders if they have to take the test again. There is a bill currently, House Bill 67, that's in the Senate. It went through the House, and they're suggesting to eliminate American history and allowing the students that are graduating through 2023, 2024 to use their course grade rather than the end of course assessment for high school graduation. That there was an emergency clause in the House bill that has been removed. So if the Senate acts on that, it takes effect 90 days, I believe, after it's signed. So that's not going to help this year. So the Senate has talked about putting it back in, the emergency clause back in. So we're just kind of waiting to see. I'm not sure why American history is the one that they're talking about removing, but just wanted to keep you updated with that. We have a government test. That's still standing, but the history we're talking about removing. Mr. Wrench and the administrative team have been working on an extended learning plan. As you know, Governor DeWine gave all of this ESSER money for the districts, and then after he gave the money, then he started telling us what we had to do with it. We have to do something, or recommended to do something with extended learning. And you know, our students need it. We need to start mitigating the learning loss that we've had. There are some tutoring. There is tutoring happening at each building, I believe, at some level, starting tonight, and that is taking place through the 13th of May. We started talking today about possibly doing things over the summer. We haven't had a great acceptance from teachers and parents alike to extend the day. I mean, an 8-hour day for kids is a lot. An 8-hour day for adults is a lot. So asking them to stay after school has not been as well received as we had hoped. So we're hoping that maybe if we offer it over the summer and doing 3 weeks, 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, we might get a better turnout. So we're looking
So
at
the
that.
current plans, though, we were talking Friday at our administrative meeting, would be to offer like credit recovery at the high school, having teachers physically teaching the class, and then there's also for those students who want to be able to take a class that they're currently maybe not available as an elective, or maybe they want to get a head start, that would be offered through an online. And we're also looking at potentially looking at late July into early August, you know, for the kindergarten through the 8th grade classes. So we're kind of seeing what we have, what we can pull out as far as available staff and to extend that. But right now, as Mrs. Miles said, it's our after-school tutoring began tonight. So.
And just the last thing, the One Needs Assessment, that is a survey that each building has to do and the district has to do. And that sort of decides what our needs are in the district. We have to determine our evidence-based strategies that we're going to be using for the following year. It's actually a 3-year plan, but we're not in that cohort to write the 3-year plan. So this is the 1-year plan for us. But next year we'll be in that cohort. But we will be deciding what evidence-based strategies we're using for improvement based on the federal dollars that we get. So that's all aligned. So from now to the end of the year, this is a lot of the work that I'll be doing on the One Needs Assessments, the CCIP, which is our consolidated grants that we get, and trying to make sure that those are all submitted. by the end of May, hopefully. So, any questions? Yes?
On the leader meet,
Sure.
that was implemented how long ago?
This year.
And who's leading that training?
Franklin Covey is the sponsor. They're the ones that came out with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and they are providing the trainers. And there was a pretty good cost to it,
Right.
but because of the school quality grants that I wrote, we were able to pay for a lot of, well, all of the elementaries out of that grant, all of the high schools out of their grant that they received. We had Title IV money that we used, which was focused on professional development. So really, I think when all is said
It
and
was
done.
all through a grant, so
Yeah.
So
multiple grants as
We're
well.
bringing that to to the students now?
Yes.
How are, huh?
All the way through.
Yeah, how are they responding to it? What do you see?
Well, I think right now we're trying, because of the COVID pandemic, I don't feel like we've had the greatest rollout that we could have had we all been in person. But our teachers right now, it's all about changing their mindset
Right.
and using
That's
the
a-
7 Habits language. So a lot of the PD that we've had this year and a lot of the coaching sessions that Susanna Horvath, who is our leader and need representative from Franklin Covey, she calls every other month or so and has a check-in with each building's BLT to talk about where they're going, what they're doing, what kind of leadership is happening. And every building's at a different space. You know, it's their culture. So some change quickly, some change a little slower than others. So the kids seem to enjoy it. You see Richard Page has stuff out there all the time about his kids taking leadership or ownership of doing announcements every day. You know, there's some recognitions happening at the middle school. I wish I listed some examples to give you of all the other schools and the things that they do. I can do that for a report next month if you need it. So,
Regards to the tutoring,
yes.
do you have a number, how many students are taking advantage of that right now?
Mr. Wrench may have that number because I think they sent them to him.
Not off the top of my head, I don't. I know that we were, as Mrs. Miles stated, it's those that have taken advantage of it is not as many as we initially would have liked. But I know that a couple buildings grew in their amount that they were offering throughout the day. So some buildings had even between, I know the high school had like 30-some taking advantage of it, where some buildings only had, about 10. So it depends upon the building. So,
Mr. Wrench, how did we relay that to the parents on that?
an all-call, a letter regarding it, and parents were, our principals also relayed that to them and offered it. And then parents also through that all-call could, if they chose to get into the tutoring, could call the principal and say, I'd like to be a part of this. So we were looking at our scores and earmarking certain students potentially. However, if the parents wanted it, they were also making accommodations for that too.
This is the first time we've done after-school tutoring, if ever. I don't recall. I mean, I've been here 29 years at the high school level, and I'm pleased that we have 30 kids taking advantage of that. So,
Yeah, that's kind of the last thing they're thinking about when it's time to go.
yeah, so if somebody's doing their job, kind of give them a shove into the tutoring because they need to graduate. They need to have that information.
When they're being tutored, okay? If they have like maybe 2 classes that they need it, do they get that the same night?
For the high school, you mean?
Yes.
Or, it depends on
How does it work?
Well, it depends on the building. Every building's specific. So if it's a self-contained classroom location like K to 3, one teacher could teach both math and reading. I know Mrs. Beach, my twin sister, teaches over here. She's strictly math, but there's another teacher that's teaching ELA. So if they need both of them, they could could split the time. Every principal's kind of structured it differently. So
Okay.
can't-
I guess I'm kind of worried about either pass or fail.
It's not a pass or fail, they just come and get extra
Isn't it
support.
extra support
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
to
there's no
help
grading.
them complete at the end of the year?
What's that?
This would help them at the end of the year to make sure they move
It's
on?
not really to help them move on to the next grade level, it is just to
Like
fill
filling in
the gaps.
Yeah.
Those
Okay.
things that they've lost,
Yeah.
most teachers are probably going to do a pre-assessment to see what
Yeah.
the kids know, what they don't, from what they taught this year. And we'll go back and do a lot of review for what those kids don't know. So it has nothing to do with you, if you attend after school, then you get to move on to the next grade level. And there's no homework, and there's, they're not taking grades on what the kids are working on. I mean, they're evaluating what
Yeah.
they're doing, but they're not saying you got an A, B, C, or
Okay.
otherwise.
Could you kind of keep us informed on how that's working?
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
all right. Thank you, Jim. Do you have anything else?
Well, I just couple on to that. We're focusing on the ELA and math mainly as far as what we talked about as far as, especially at the lower levels with the reading levels and also then the math. High school, we have somebody available for science, social studies, math, and ELA. So we're servicing all those different areas. So some nights, ELA might be available 2 nights, and then another night it might be social studies is not available a couple of nights. But
Okay,
there's about 4 or 5 tutors available out at the high school right now. Middle school has 3, I believe that they have. So each building has at least 2 to 3, but the high school has 1 per one of those areas. Now, as far as catching up, so passing on, so that's what the early summer school would be for the high school, that credit recovery. So I didn't pass 9th grade English, then they can take that class through the summer and hopefully get enough credit, then pass the summer school to pass on to 10th grade English.
okay,
So,
all right.
And
Thank
we're
you.
providing transportation too, that was
Yes.
a key thing that we've never done before. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure, I'm waiting to hear from Tracy how that actually went tonight, since it was our first night, but I think that's hopefully going to stir up some other interests as we move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
the board reports, Brian Watkins for the middle school, I laid that here in front of you today. He is commending the Power of the Pen team that participated in regional competition. They go to regional competition on Saturday, so a couple of weeks ago that they had won and were able to move on. So they'll find out how well they have done before moving on to state competition. So I want to commend those students. He said they have 22 signed up for after-school tutoring. That was as of 9:28 this morning. ELA state testing, as Mrs. Miles talked about, it begins. The middle school is also having class presentations of dangers of vaping at the end of April, and the name of the program is called Catch My Breath. And I believe, I'm not quite sure who that one is through, but because we were just talking about that one just recently, but having them be able to come in. And then also the Leader in Me, the student lighthouse team, made newsletters to send home detailing the Leader in Me process and what they're doing at the middle school regarding Leader in Me. I will touch on some other ones. Like the high school, they want to congratulate their February Students of the Month. Congratulating Seth Ferguson and Connor Harlan and Coach Poland for qualifying for state competition. Also the academic challenge team that has now won the IBC 2 straight years. And those names are listed there in her update. And she had identified 70 students, but 39 will be attending for after-school tutoring. And there's a list of the actual tutors that will be board approving. Mr. Page, the grades 2 and 3 raised $1,608.61 for Rainbow Connection. They will have an ice cream party for their success. And their after-school tutoring begins today also. And at this time, that was Wednesday last week, they had 13 students identified that were coming. But he told me he had received a few more this morning. The intermediate, they're working with the Adams Board of taking it to the schools, and it's on focusing on stranger danger and also the detriments of drug, tobacco, vaping for students. They raised $1,123 for the Rainbow Connection. They enjoyed raising money for a worthy cause. Spring Pictures will be held on Thursday the 4th, approximately, I think that might be a typo. So they had approximately 6 of their students coming in. Number 4 is their air test, their state tests are coming up again. The school counselor, Kayla Mundell, and also the art teacher, Mrs. Sheets, are working to making a difference through kindness and empathy through the Leader in Me program. And they're making cards to send to Texas where the recent disaster has struck. And Mrs. Mundell's participated with another guidance counselor on a similar project. So those students appreciate receiving those cards. Mr. Howell, the band director, has taken to his challenge of teaching 5th grade music at a whole new level. So this year, the kids will be keeping up by beating a drumming on the buckets of drumsticks, and now have them in the guitar lessons. So I don't know if you guys saw the recent Mustang Minute that was 2 weekends ago, where there were some pictures of the students playing guitars. We may have a future Garth Brooks, I don't know. Mr. Howell held a parent meeting for those that were interested in band, and currently he meets with them he meets with them about 7:30 for future band members so they can start practicing their horns. And the one I have is from Mr. Seibert. Third 9 weeks is ending the 18th, and they're celebrating and recognizing one student from each class for the Mustang and Principal Awards. The award will be overall character, behavior, and attitude, and the Principal Award is for those who have given their best effort in the classroom and on homework. As he says, it's not necessarily all A's. They had Dr. Seuss was last week. They really enjoyed getting into Dr. Seuss, having thing 1, thing 2, so it's good in that aspect for them to participate in that. There's a little bit of competition. The primary did outbeat the elementary. $2,300 they raised for Rainbow Connection, and they did that in 4 days. So there was a little friendly competition between those two buildings. And they had Percy Gardner come in and accept the donation. They have the mobile dentist coming, and kindergarten screenings for next year. The dates are April 16th and the 23rd. And he is presently working on putting the finishing touches on room assignments for the preschool staff to join them for next year, and also the other staff that need to be moved. Beth Lentz for technology and maintenance. They have 695 Chromebooks in replacement for older devices for 1-to-1. They're assigned a new Chromebook at 2nd and 7th grade, and we'll keep that for those years in between. And there will be a tech fee that will cover the cost to offset breakage for those devices. The acceptable use policy was part of your board packet for this evening to approve for next school year for students to follow the rules for Chromebooks. Maintenance part of it, high school roof is moving along. The company has made some good inroads here recently with the weather. They're also hoping there's always a 10% surge overrun, or you order more materials, 10% more. They're kind of watching what they're using, and any leftovers we'll hopefully be able to put on the concession stand. The guy feels that there should be enough by square footage for the concession stand at the stadium. So that's a good thing. The visitor bleachers at the stadium are up, and They're pretty much, they put the finishing touches on last week. I think they started like on Monday, and they were pretty much done by the end of the week last week. High school lighting project converting to LED, they're about 70% complete, and they're saving on the electric bill this past month $2,500. Boiler replacement for Eastport Middle School. It's in your board packet regarding the board replacement. Looking at using the CARE dollars for those for better air quality. And we had some issues last week at the primary bureau building where the one boiler went completely down and they had to service the other one because it was working intermittently. It was still running as of last week. So our hope would be to be able to take the boiler, one of the boilers from the middle school, move it to the primary, and they'll still have two operable boilers, but we're basically using parts from the four that we would take out as far as extra replacements as it would, when it would break down. And the last thing on there is that the ball field at the batting cage was tore down a couple weeks ago, and the baseball boosters and softball boosters have raised money, and with Mr. Host leading that charge to put up a new batting cage, and it'll go on the first base dugout side. Matt Grant said where it currently was, it's just too wet. But so moving into the opposite side. Part of that being wet is that there's probably about 5 to 6 beavers that they're for sure that live over there in that wetland. If that water moves a little better, our ball fields wouldn't be as wet as they currently are. We thought we had it fixed this past summer because we trenched the ditches again, things like that, but the water's backing up thanks to the beavers. So we're hoping to see about what ODNR can allow us to do to maybe trap them, move them, and relocate them. So they're coming up with a couple different ideas. But there's a good many of them over there. So if you walk through there with your muck boots on, you'll see all their little dams. So it is causing problems for those ball fields and where the band practices.
There was a guy years ago, I think on TV, that had trouble getting rid of a groundhog. I think Bill Murray.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they said that we have a groundhog that lives in the barn sheds over there in the field too. They've kind of bored up through the ground. And so if we get those trapped and then we can fill the holes, then they can be gone. But everything, water causes a lot of problems, that's for sure. So, and then preschool update. They had, on March 1st PD, they had CPR and seizure procedures were reviewed. They also went over augmentation and alternative communication devices that took place by our speech and language pathologist, Mrs. Summers. So if a student needs to communicate via device, they were retrained in those and how to use a device for those students to be able to push or look with an eye gaze of yes or no and how to answer. The preschool staff, as I said, mobile dentist is coming. They love Green in the month. They welcome a long-term substitute for Brianna Olinger because she is had taken over for Brittany Montanez, who resigned last month. And they have 3 student teachers in the building this year. So they will finish it at the end of spring. So those are those board reports. If I transition into business advisory, just business advisory meets quarterly, and the plan was in place, but a couple of survey results. I talked about remote edX a couple months ago, that the ESC was going for a grant. And the grant would be to be able to have industry credentials for our students to be taking those industry credentials at the high school. So the part of the surveys was, does your business value or require employee or potential employees to have earned an industry recognized certificates? 69.4% said yes. So of those businesses that were surveyed, there would be a purpose for us to be able to offer these at our high school. What type of credentials would you like to have them when you hire? So 61% said Microsoft Word and Excel, and then 54% said first aid and CPR. 35% said the OSHA requirements, and then we have 32% the Lean Six Sigma. And I've been in conversations with Novellus about, our partnerships. Once we have some of these industry credentials, could some of our kids come over and start beginning after-school employment? So they're very intrigued with those opportunities for us with Novellus, AKA Alaris. Does your district currently offer industry credentials? And 81% of the districts that were surveyed said no. So, and we do not provide industry credentials at this time, but if we do receive this grant through the ESC, we'll be able to do that. They will put on or hire at the ESC an extra career navigator and will work with each district. One will be in Tuscarawas County, so they'll service all our schools on how to implement these programs. I've already talked with Mrs. Kahn, and she's saying some of the things that were within our career tech programs are business, our FFA, and also our metals, which is, I can't think of the pathway name of it, but mechanical engineering, yeah. And Mr. Baldwin will have media and web design for next year. He's finishing his career tech. So of those four, that will be able to then get those industry credentials just at our high school, which is a big thing for our kids to be able to go on. And I know in particular, with our FFA as a big and growing program, Mr. Baldwin has a lot of kids in his classroom. He produces with his kids the Mustang Minutes and does a lot of stuff with us for Facebook. Those kids love those things, and keeping them here versus them going to a Buckeye Career Center helps us staying here financially with our students, but also those students having it in-house with us. Their familiarity is a blessing for us. So that's a business advisory council. So they're hopefully that grant comes for us.
Do we know when they'll know if we get the grant, or
It
is there a
should be-
deadline, or is it a?
Yes, and it should be coming here in the next a month or so is when it should be arriving. I know that I had an email today regarding filling out a couple of paperwork, and Mrs. Lynn did that regarding the tech stuff. They've had the deadline of March 1st. It was extended to June 15th. So, no, I'm sorry, that's due to the joint statement. So it is coming up here in the next month. So. I'll go to stadium update. I laid in front of you the Beaver construction packet. Just on the third page in, February and March construction activities. Visitor bleach construction was completed. Field house foundations were completed. Steel structure was erected and detailing is completed. Foundation, mason block has been completed. Installation of backfill has been finished. Final grades and drainage. As of today, they were putting up the sidewalls. That started that on the field house. And also the underground plumbing. So what is coming next is on the March, April, which they've already started the metal sheeting on the field house. It'll be the roof. They're putting the brick veneer. I don't know if we got those delivered. They called us Friday and wanted them for Monday. I don't know if we were able to accommodate, but there's nothing like short notice. Tomorrow morning.
I think that's what she said.
That was pretty short notice. Home bleachers start on Monday for them to start going up. The 30th, the press box should arrive, and they will have a crane to put the press box in place. So here in the next couple of weeks, we'll have the bleachers will all be installed. So they'll continue with the subgrade within the the field house. And the last thing on that list is the concession stand. The design should be about ready to go to bid. I think we were on a April 1st deadline to make sure that we had all the bids go out for that. And then he had some things with the timelines and where we're falling with those in the last couple of sheets. Right now, we're pretty much back on schedule due to the snow that we had before.
The side that they have siding on now, to let people know, is this what we're going to see on the side of that building?
That's, yes.
Horseshoe with the Mustang?
In our construction meeting, we talked about taking one of the weight room walls or the old wrestling room walls and doing some designs on it before. I think we talked about doing built on tradition putting that up there. We couldn't save when the press box went down, that wasn't salvageable, but we'll have to talk to the art department or somebody. But yes, that design would be what's on the facing Main Street. As you turn on water, that you would see that sign. Yeah. We've had a couple quotes through that. The signage on the 11th Street side, Mr. Peters' class is working on doing all that. So they're cutting it using the machines to cut all that stuff out. So, and it says, we are claiming on home of the Mustangs, but I don't believe that's what we settled at the stadium committee. But I can't recall right off the top of my head what we picked. So. Let's see, this a touch base. If we have we can take a bus out of service, just to say that we look at selling off our 2002 bus, so we can take one out of commission. Last year, I think one went to Africa and used as a school. So the person who bought it paid just as much or more to get it to Africa for a school, but that was pretty neat that's how it ended up. I have two more things I touched base on. Our enrollment is pretty much staying steady with 1,817 students. That includes our Buckeye and CCP students, and with our remote and online students, and also our face-to-face. So that's our current enrollment there. And the last thing I want to touch base with, and Mrs. Miles didn't say it in her report, but she goes on tomorrow, the 16th, to the ESC to try to get the 21st Century grants and working through that process. Then we're looking at two different grants. One would be for 6th grade through 12th grade, and the other would be K-5, and they would be for after-school programming. So there would be the requirements to fit in there could be, it's for tutoring for purposes, but also extension activities. They might be Mr. Baldwin, since he's here, I'll pick on him a little bit, but he's said, hey, I'd love to do some things technology-wise. So he would come in and they'd have a small stipend to teach a class. Our staff would be there for tutors, and we'd offer and open it to our classified staff too. Our fiscal agent would be the Educational Service Center. So we're hoping that grant would come, and you go to a bidders conference tomorrow.
It happens tomorrow, it's virtual, but yes. And we'll start writing it.
Yeah, so
I didn't want to say anything in case we didn't get it.
yeah. Well, we got a lot of things going on that's beneficial for us, so that if we can get those two grants, helps us out. That grant in itself, we're shooting for several $100,000 per both of those grants. So if we can get $300,000 each to run our after-school programming, and that would be for a 3-year commitment. So it's a great opportunity. We buy a new, maybe a milling machine as part of the mechanical engineering. So Mr. Peters can then use that in his classroom. Mr. Baldwin needs a particular type of cameras, we buy it for after-school programming, and then he ends up using it within his classroom. So it really helps us out in the long run that way. So fingers are crossed, but I always said you only cross two, because you cross more than that, you jinx yourself. So we're hoping that we can get some things working. So that's all I have under administrative reports.
Okay. You want to move on down to your accommodation?
We can do that. Accommodations, again, Mr. or Mrs. Kahn talked about our IBC champs for academic challenge, but we want to commend our IBC champs for academic challenge, the middle school Power to Pen team, the cheerleaders that won the IBC. They were honored at a basketball game, and they just most recently competed and did very well at state. So I want to congratulate them. Congratulate Seth and Connor for our state wrestlers. The Buckeye Career Center, and there's a list I can go through. It's pretty lengthy, but we have the BPA state qualifiers for personal finance. Bless you. Personal financial management, Britland Kirkpatrick, computer networking, Matthew Rogers. Then you have the HOSA state qualifiers. First place was job seeking skills for Gabrielle Keller. Sports medicine, Connor Harlan. Second place recipient interviewing skills was Janelle Paulette. Third place for health safety was Mackenzie Guy. Fourth place recipient epidemiology, Paige Hicks. Skills USA state qualifiers, advertising, Olivia Swigert. And ethics, it was team B, Kyle Webb, and model was Hannah Schneider. Bronze medals in that same division were Hermelinda Abrica, and electrical construction wiring was Haley Hevlin. So I want to congratulate all those students for a job well done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to need to have an executive session. So do you want to have it at the end, or do you want to go ahead and have it now? It's up to, if you want to have it towards the end, we can go ahead and go through the rest of our
I'm
agenda.
good with the end. I don't think anything on there needs addressed.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything to take action on to come back out
I don't.
that I know. Okay?
Well, you said if you.
I do want to take about a 5-minute break so the board can go in and discuss something with some action to be taken. Okay? So it's only going to take us 5 minutes.
So you want to do two
Yes.
executive sessions?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll do ours first, and then we'll come back out and go through the rest of the agenda, and then have the executive session at the end.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to entertain a motion. We go into an executive session to discuss employment.
I'll move.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Sproul,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mr. Beckley,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mr. Trimmer. Bless you. 6:18.
6:18. And we will just slip in your office, okay? Ready? Okay. The board is back out of the executive session, and we're going to proceed. And our next item, and we will be having another executive session, but that will be at the end of our meeting. So we're going to move on to approval for the administrative contract for Kim Beckley as treasurer of Claymont City Schools. And that will be effective from August 1 to 2021 to July 31, 2026, as per negotiation with the Board of Education. And I will entertain a motion that we accept that. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Beckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Sproul?
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison?
Yes.
Mr. Miles?
Yes.
And Mr. Trimmer?
Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, addendum items.
Yes, we had a couple late additions for after-school tutoring, so we need to make an addendum for, which would be item M on our board agenda, to add Richard Page and Denise Harmon as after-school tutoring. So
I'll move.
Do we have a second? Okay, good. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Sproul?
Yes.
Mr. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Beckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison?
Yes.
And Mr. Trimmer?
Yes.
Motion carried. We have anything to be pulled separately? I don't believe so. Okay, we'll move into the treasurer's report.
Okay. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for voting on that tonight and the confidence you carry in me. It's truly appreciated. I enjoy working here and with each one of you who's here. So just thank you again. Moving into my reports, for the month of February, we're ending with a total fund balance of $11,306,094.33. If you look at the percentage to date, we're right on target for where my forecast was. We've got a overage right now of revenues of $975,448. The big part of that is we got our second payment of our success money came in February. That comes twice in the year. So we got that chunk of money. And also I had received 3 property tax advances. So I will be getting the final settlement of that. I believe it's this week. So that helped our cash flow. And so I was able to keep some in the Star Ohio account and get what little interest we do get on that money. So that's where we're standing at right now. So if I need a motion and a second to accept the financial report for February, the payment and bills as I presented, the regular board meetings from February 8th, and then also there's the amounts and the rates that were determined by the Budget Commission of the Tuscarawas County for the levies and certifying them to the county auditor. So we have general of 4.2 mills that will bring in $877,000, another general of 20.5 mills, which is $3,486,000. The bond issue, that this will be the last year of collection of that, is down to 0.9 mills. That will bring in $187,000. That will pay off the loan for all the high school and all the remodels. And then the new levy that was just passed last year starts. So the 2 mills for the permanent improvement will bring in $417,000, and the general, the 3.0 mills of the general fund will bring in $626,000 from that. So looking for a motion to accept all those items.
Okay, we need a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Mr. Trimmer, do we have a second? I'll second that. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Beckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison?
Yes.
Mrs. Sproul,
Yes.
and Mr. Miles.
Yes.
Motion carried. We'll move into the superintendent's recommendation.
And I'll go through these, I'll explain a little bit about each one that we have. First off would be accepting the resignation for retirement purposes for Tracy Peterman. Tracy's our current transportation and food service coordinator. She is retiring at the end of June. Want to thank her for all her years of service. I know that, the finding enough bus drivers and cooks and all the things to operate, kind of wears on you at times, but I know she's very excited about retiring. So I want to wish her well for retirement. Approve the continuing contract for the 2021 school year for Linda Davis. She's an educational aide. The boiler replacement through the CARES Act. We have the middle school boiler replacement for heating and cooling pumps and for computer controls. That's $395,584. And that would be paid through the ESSER grants. Approve the Gardner for the elementary boiler replacement. That's $139,935. So we're dollars through ESSER. We're looking at 2 boilers at the middle school and 1 boiler at the elementary school. So they're supposed to be more energy efficient, but replacing those. People don't understand how much heating and cooling costs to operate those, and there's a price tag that says how much they do run. So when heating goes, and also when the AC goes out, we try to keep those there. So there's some phenomenal cost there, and it's paid through ESSER grant. It's a renewal for entering in a memorandum of understanding with the County Board of Commissioners to lease the radio tower. So that was in your board packet. So there's a radio tower that our bus repeater goes off of, so our buses can communicate back to our bus garage. So that's it's like every other year that we have to look at that. Approve the administration of paper pencil third grade ELA test for that in math. So that'll be for this school year. There is no guarantee for the third grade test. So a student in the past, if they did not pass the third grade test, could possibly not move on to 4th grade. Well, last year that we didn't have a test, and this year we are testing, but there's still no guarantee. So there's no penalty for that kid not to pass the test. Just as every year, though, if the teacher and the parent and the principals say this child's not developing and ready to move on, they still could be retained, but it's not because of a third grade test. Approve the job descriptions for groundskeeper/custodian, and I did make a change for that one. So I did put on director of operation would be who that person reports to. Thank you, Mrs. Sproul, for pointing that one out. And district groundskeeper/maintenance. So those are 2 job descriptions that we were looking at for potential future use. The calendar for next school year, to approve it. First day for students would be the 19th of August. And graduation would be set for the Friday the 27th. We have that set out. Thank our calendar committee, Mrs. Miles, for heading that one up. And also spearheading with our professional development that goes with that also. Board policies to review. Mrs. Miles talked about her review of the self-review that's coming we have for the State Department, but to review our board policies on Title I. We met with the title teachers last Friday, or this past Friday. So participation in Title I programs, to highlight a few, like on B, meetings shall be conducted with parents to include provisions in scheduling. Meetings shall be to review an explanation of the curriculum, and also
formulate suggestions from experiences from other parents regarding that. So each building has a parent meeting every year to go over those type of things within our participation program. So this is to review that of policy 7.3. Next policy, yes.
What's the turnout for that? How,
What's the turnout for? the
you have
parent?
parents coming in, is that what you're saying, for meeting?
This year, not.
Yeah,
Because
right.
of COVID. A lot of it was done through email or
Phone
a
calls.
letter
Right,
home.
right.
Um,
How's that going?
It depends on the building. Richard had a Title I parent meeting beginning of his year, beginning of his second or third grade, but because he wrapped that in with the third grade reading guarantee, those parents were there because they wanted to hear about the guarantee, and then he threw in the other stuff about Title I, so.
We try to get creative in making sure we're pulling enough parents in. We've offered, in the past, like dinner time, that, during parent-teacher conferences, anything that we can get more parents to participate. But typically, if you have 150 students, you maybe have 25 parents,
You're lucky.
if we're lucky. So, the next policy, 6.06. This one is I'm highlighting mainly on this one is the McKinney-Vento, which is the homeless student. And under D, the McKinney-Vento Act, we provide a free and appropriate public education from public preschool all the way through their youth of 12th grade. So if a parent, or if a kid or parent is technically, if they're doubling up with somebody, living with somebody, they would technically could be homeless. If they live in a camper, they would be technically homeless. So a kid moves out and is on their own somehow, they would be homeless. So we would provide those resources that go with the part of this act. And some of that is, in the last one that we have is board policy, is transportation. So if we have a student technically that lives in our district now, but they want to go back to Dover because maybe they lived in Dover prior to becoming homeless, we have to look at transporting them back to their home school. So that's an option. So that's all part of our board policies here under the McKinney-Vento Act, and also touching base with the last one, the board policy at 6.4 for transportation, our transportation policy. So transportation, we can, if we're providing transportation for other students, they're provided, we have within our parameters that we provide within a distance. But again, like I said, if a student lives outside or is currently living with us and wants to return back to their home school, we would have to pay for that. So just to review those policies, other than board action that we reviewed them. The individuals as participants at district level meetings, April Nicely was on the calendar committee, as well as Kendra Rothrock. The YMCA reached out to me a couple weeks ago and would like to enter an agreement with using our school buses. Mrs. Peterman said that we've done this in the past before, so if they're doing summer programming, that we could provide our school buses and they would pay our drivers to bus them around to the field trip events. So that would be a reason for item K. The acceptable use policy for computers, that was in your board packet, that came from Mrs. Lint. The item M for tutors for after school, with the addition of Richard Page and Denise Harmon. So those people as presented. The following non-athletic supplementals for spring. I don't know if you guys remember, but we are going to be looking at putting on our spring musical. And I don't know the dates exactly when that would occur, but the kids have already started. So that's the group for in doing that. And I also, in the spring sport, would be Abby Mast as JV softball. Approve the OSHA wrestling tournament workers that were held on February 27th. That's basically an in and an out from the OSHA. And also the Howe High School girls basketball tournament that we held when we hosted a girls tournament game for item P. Volunteer softball coaches, Lindsay Hummel, and I want to make a note that Janetta Johns is Johnetta, not Janetta. So they're volunteer softball coaches. Non-renew the winter supplementals, and then go as listed, as go from boys and girls basketball to wrestling and to bowling and then to cheerleading. Approve the following substitute teachers and parapros, and a Mackenzie Karen with a substitute license, and we do not have any classified substitutes for this month. So any questions or discussion over those items?
Okay, we'll move on to any new business.
Now we need a motion and a second.
We better do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Entertain a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Sproul,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mr. Beckley,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mr. Trimmer.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now we'll go into if there's any new business.
I just want a couple legislative items that have come up here recently. Governor DeWine, he has, as Mrs. Miles mentioned, came out with the extended learning plan and then say, okay, now we're going to give you the guidance to do it. He has now made COVID-19 test kits available to ESCs, and he'll be rolling those out to schools. So we'll be working with probably our school nurses as far as testing students who are symptomatic. So that's coming out new. Also, in that any student who is in extracurricular activities, they do not have to quarantine if they're in extracurricular activities if it was due to classroom exposure and if they don't have symptoms. So as we've gone through this whole pandemic, things have changed sometimes by every day. So that's a change there. Highlight a couple other things. Mrs. Miles already talked about the history exam. A couple other things here. House Bill 133, they would, this passed, it would provide the reduced property valuation for tax years 2021, and 22 for eligible individuals as a result of the pandemic. And there's also House Senate Bill 62 is basically the same thing. We have in the House that is being backed by Brett Hilliard, and in the Senate is being backed by Bob Hackett. So if those are, I don't know what the eligible requirements are to get your property values reduced, but I hope that that doesn't come back that we owe people money if those are passed. And the State Board of Education passed a resolution by a vote of 16-1 to encourage changes in the graduation for 2021. So it could be based on final grade in lieu of a graduation exam. Workplace readiness criteria, so we talked about the Sigma Tri and the remote Red X things, but this would be those Ohio Means Job seals, and also recommendation by the principal in consultation with teachers and counselors. So basically, if they have their credits, they have passed, we'd be looking at those students being able to graduate. So that is was passed by the state board 16-1. So just kind of give you some updates on legislative new business.
Okay. Anything else?
I do not.
Okay, I'd just like to commend our treasurer, Kim Beckley, on an outstanding job that she has done to keep us in line and keep our district in line and trying to get us financial under our financial belt here. Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything from the board members? Okay, if not, our next regular meeting is April 12th.
Do you want to go to executive session?
We will, yeah. April 12th at 5:30. And I entertain a motion to go into executive session for employment, and letter D, preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations, and letter E, matters required to keep confidential. So I entertain a motion that we move into executive session.
I'll move.
Okay, do we have a second? I'll second it. Roll call.
Mrs. Sproul?
Yes.
Mr. Beckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison?
Yes.
Mr. Miles?
Yes.
And Mr. Trimmer?
Okay,
6:57.
57. entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Do we have a second? Roll call.
Who was second? Sorry. Mrs. Sproul?
Yes.
Mr. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Beckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison?
Yes.
And Mr. Trimmer?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 8:32.